Your account balance is $4.12, Mr. Vance. The young bank teller looked down at her screen, then up at me with eyes full of pity. My hand froze in midair, holding the deposit slip I had brought to pay my quarterly property taxes. I was 69 years old. I had spent 45 years working as a civil engineer, building a $400,000 retirement nest egg. "That's impossible," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I have $200,000 in checking and another $200,000 in a fixed CD. Check again, please." The teller clicked her mouse twice, her brow furrowing. "A power of attorney transfer was processed yesterday morning at 9 a.m. Your son, Brandon, and your daughter, Rachel, executed a full liquidity draw. They transferred the entire balance to an offshore trust account." My knees felt like water. I grabbed the cold marble counter to steady myself. My own children, the two people I had sacrificed my entire adult life to raise, had cleaned me out. Before I could even process the shock, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from Brandon. "Dad, don't panic. Rachel and I moved the funds to protect the estate. We saw the medical letter from Dr. Aris. We know what you're hiding from us." My heart hammered against my ribs. I hadn't told anyone about my visit to Dr. Aris last week. I hadn't even told my late wife's sister. If you want to hear more raw, emotional confessions from people who survived their family's deepest betrayals, take just 5 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling these true stories. I stumbled out of the main lobby into the vault hallway. The bank manager, a gray-haired man named David who had known me for 20 years, stepped out of his office with a heavy steel key in his hand. "Arthur," David said softly, closing the door behind us, "your kids took every dollar from the liquid accounts, but they didn't ask about the vault. They don't even know it exists." "The safe deposit box," I breathed. "They forgot about box 804. The one your late wife Margaret signed for back in 1994. But Arthur, someone else tried to access it 2 hours ago." My head snapped up. Someone else? Who? "A woman," David said, leading me down the carpeted stairs into the concrete vault room. "She had the secondary key, but her signature didn't match Margaret's authorization file, so we turned her away. She left this behind on the counter." David handed me a small laminated business card. Printed on it was a simple logo: Midwest Paternity and Genealogic Verification Services. My hands shook as I unlocked box 804 using my master key and David's guard key. The heavy brass box slid out of the steel wall with a cold metallic scrape. I carried the box into a private viewing booth and pulled off the lid. My children thought they had stripped me of everything I owned. They thought I was an old man with failing memory who could easily be put away in a state facility. But sitting right at the top of the box was an old yellowed manila envelope tied with a faded red ribbon. Inside wasn't money or stock certificates. It was a certified hospital birth record from St. Jude's Memorial Hospital, dated October 14th, 1988. The day Brandon was born. Mother, Margaret Vance. Father, unknown/refused. Blood type, AB positive. Note, biological incompatibility with listed guardian, Arthur Vance. Blood type, O negative. I sat down on the leather stool, the breath knocked out of my lungs. 36 years. For 36 years I had raised Brandon believing he was my biological son. I paid his college tuition, bought his first car, and paid off his mortgage when his business failed 3 years ago. I reached deeper into the steel box. Beneath the birth record lay an unread letter written in my late wife Margaret's handwriting, dated 3 days before she passed away from cancer in 2020. I broke the wax seal on the envelope. The first sentence made my blood run cold. "Arthur, if you are reading this, it means Brandon and Rachel have finally found the truth about who funded the estate. I'm so sorry. I lied to protect you from the man in Chicago." I stared at Margaret's delicate cursive writing, my vision blurring with tears. The man in Chicago was named Raymond Sterling, the letter continued. He was my father's former business partner. In 1987, when your engineering firm was going bankrupt and we were about to lose our house, I didn't get a loan from a bank. I went to Raymond. He agreed to give us $200,000, but he demanded a terrifying price. I stopped reading. My pulse was pounding in my ears like a sledgehammer. In 1987, my small firm had suddenly received an anonymous $200,000 cash infusion that saved us from ruin. Margaret had told me it was an inheritance from her distant aunt in Ohio. I had believed her, without asking a single question. I read the next paragraph. Raymond made me sign a private deed of trust against our family home, but that wasn't all. He made a second condition. If we ever defaulted on the interest payments, he would reveal the real reason he gave us the money and the real identity of the child I was carrying. Arthur, Brandon isn't your son, but he isn't Raymond's either. He belongs to someone you worked with every day. A loud knock on the viewing booth door shattered the silence. I jumped, quickly shoving the letter and the birth record back into the manila envelope. "Arthur?" David's voice called out from the hallway. "You have a visitor upstairs. She says it's urgent, and she brought a sheriff's deputy with her." I locked box 804, put the manila envelope into my inner coat pocket, and walked up the carpeted stairs to the main lobby. Standing near the glass entrance doors was my 34-year-old daughter, Rachel. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, holding a red leather folder. Standing beside her was an armed deputy, holding a legal summons. "Dad," Rachel said, stepping forward with a cold, rehearsed smile, "you shouldn't be driving around in your condition. We've been looking for you all morning." "Where is Brandon, Rachel?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet. "Where is my money?" "It's not your money anymore, Dad," Rachel said, signaling the deputy. "We filed an emergency adult guardianship petition 2 hours ago. The judge signed a temporary freeze order. You've been declared legally incompetent." The deputy stepped forward, holding a folded paper. "Mr. Vance, I need you to come with us voluntarily. Your children have arranged a temporary evaluation room for you at the Restful Pines Care Center." "I am 69 years old, and my mind is perfectly clear," I shouted, backing away toward the bank vault doors. "David, call my lawyer." "Your lawyer dropped you this morning, Dad," Rachel said smoothly, her eyes completely devoid of warmth. "Brandon paid off his retainer using the trust funds. You don't have an attorney anymore, and you don't have a bank account." She pulled a single sheet of paper out of her red folder and held it up so I could see it. It was a medical assessment form bearing the signature of Dr. Eris. Diagnosis: early-stage vascular dementia. Recommendation: immediate involuntary residential care. Evaluator: Dr. Julian Eris. My jaw dropped. Dr. Eris had seen me last week for a routine blood pressure check. He had told me my test results were normal. He never mentioned dementia. Then I looked at the bottom of the medical form. Printed in fine ink under the clinic's address was the name of the parent medical corporation, Sterling Healthcare Holdings, Chicago, IL. Raymond Sterling, the name from my wife's hidden letter. "Dr. Eris works for Sterling," I whispered, the puzzle pieces slamming together with terrifying speed. "What are you talking about, Dad?" Rachel asked, her brow furrowing in genuine confusion for a split second. "Brandon arranged the doctor's appointment through his company's health network. He said Dr. Eris was a top specialist." "Brandon didn't arrange it to help me, Rachel," I said, stepping right up to my daughter, looking into her eyes. "Brandon is working with Sterling. They're using you to drain my estate before the deed of trust expires on my house." Rachel scoffed, shaking her head. "You're delusional, Dad. Look at you, making up conspiracy theories about companies in Chicago. Deputy, please take him." "Wait," I yelled, reaching into my coat pocket and pulling out the yellowed manila envelope from box 804. "You want to know why Brandon cleared out my bank account yesterday morning, Rachel? Look at this." I shoved the 1988 birth record into Rachel's hands. Rachel glanced down at the hospital record. As her eyes scanned the blood type report and the unknown father entry, her arrogant expression melted into sheer disbelief. This is a forgery," she stammered, her fingers clutching the paper so hard it crumpled. "Brandon is my older brother. He's Dad's son." "Look at the blood types, Rachel," I said, my voice shaking with emotional exhaustion. "Your mother and I both had type O blood. Two O-type parents can never produce an AB-positive child. It's biologically impossible. I am not Brandon's biological father." The deputy took a step back, looking between Rachel and me, realizing this wasn't a simple case of a confused old man resisting medical care. Who is his father?" Rachel asked, her voice cracking for the first time. "Read the second page," I pointed to my wife's handwritten letter. "Read who Brandon's real father is." Rachel pulled out Margaret's letter. Her eyes flew down the lines until she reached the middle of the second page. Brandon's real father was Raymond Sterling's younger brother, Julian Sterling, the man who became a doctor in Chicago. Brandon found out 6 months ago through a commercial DNA test. He didn't tell you, Arthur. He went to Chicago and made a deal with Julian to steal your home estate in exchange for a 50% share in Sterling Healthcare. Rachel dropped the paper onto the marble floor as if it had burned her skin. "Julian Sterling," Rachel whispered, her face going pale as chalk. "Dr. Aris. His real name is Julian Sterling?" "Brandon didn't take my $400,000 to protect me, Rachel," I said, feeling a sudden surge of strength. "He took it to pay the legal fees to foreclose on my home using Raymond Sterling's 1987 deed of trust, and he used you to sign the power of attorney so he wouldn't get his own hands dirty." Rachel pulled out her phone, her hands shaking violently. She dialed Brandon's number on speakerphone. The line rang 3 times before Brandon picked up, his voice sounding rushed with the loud noise of airport announcements in the background. "Rachel," Brandon said over the speaker, "is it done? Did the deputy take him to Restful Pines?" "Brandon," Rachel said, her voice trembling with rage, "where are you right now?" "I'm at the gate, Rachel," Brandon said, entirely unaware that the deputy and I were listening to every word. "I just boarded the flight to Chicago. Listen, as soon as the judge confirms the temporary guardianship tomorrow morning, transfer the house title to the Sterling Holdings portal. They just deposited the $2 million buyout fee into our joint account." "Our joint account?" Rachel gasped, tears filling her eyes. "Brandon, you told me we were doing this to pay for Dad's medical treatment. You told him he had dementia." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. The background noise of the airport suddenly vanished as Brandon walked into a quieter corridor. "Rachel, don't be naive." Brandon's voice turned ice cold, completely stripped of any filial affection. "The old man isn't even my real father. I've known for 6 months. He spent 30 years living off a lie, and now I'm taking what I'm owed from the Sterling Trust. You get 20% if you keep your mouth shut and let the deputy lock him up." "You monster!" Rachel sobbed. "He raised you. He paid off your bankruptcy." "He's nothing to me," Brandon spat over the phone. "And if you try to stop the transfer, Rachel, I'll tell the district attorney that you were the one who signed the fraudulent power of attorney forms. You'll go to prison right alongside Dr. Aris. Goodbye." The line went dead. Rachel dropped her phone onto the floor, collapsing into a chair in the bank lobby, burying her face in her hands, weeping uncontrollably. The deputy looked at me, then at the birth record and the letter on the floor. He slowly reached for his radio on his shoulder strap. "Central," the deputy said into his radio, his voice firm and authoritative.
This is Unit 104. I need an immediate hold placed on Flight 124 to Chicago at the regional airport. We have an ongoing grand larceny and elder exploitation in progress.
2 hours later, we were standing in the office of the County Registrar of Deeds. With the deputy's official report and the original contents of Box 804, we confronted the county clerk. Tucked into the very back of my late wife's manila envelope was a final document that neither Brandon nor the Sterling family knew existed. It was a certified satisfaction of mortgage, dated September 12, 1999, signed by Raymond Sterling himself right before he died. My wife Margaret had spent 12 years secretly saving money from her small tailoring business, sending monthly cashier's checks to Chicago until the $200,000 debt was paid off in full. The 1987 deed of trust was completely void. The house didn't belong to Sterling Healthcare. It didn't belong to Brandon. It belonged 100% to me. State troopers arrested Brandon at the gate at Chicago O'Hare Airport as he stepped off the plane. He was extradited back to our home county to face federal charges of elder financial exploitation, wire fraud, and grand larceny. Dr. Julian Sterling, alias Dr. Eris, was arrested at his medical clinic the following morning. His medical license was permanently revoked, and he was indicted for conspiracy to commit medical fraud and falsifying official evaluation records. The $400,000 stolen from my liquid accounts was completely recovered from the offshore trust account before Brandon could clear the transfer. Rachel didn't escape consequences entirely, though she was spared criminal prosecution after cooperating fully with the state prosecutor. The guilt of what she had almost done to me devastated her. She spent 6 months living in a small apartment nearby, trying to earn my forgiveness, afraid to even look me in the eye when she dropped off my groceries. 9 months after that terrible morning at the bank, I stood in my backyard, looking out over the 3 acres of green lawn my grandfather had bought back in 1950. The afternoon sun was warm, filtering through the branches of the old oak tree where I used to build wooden birdhouses with my children when they were small. Rachel walked out onto the porch carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. She set one down on the small wooden table beside my chair. She didn't say anything. She just sat down on the steps, quiet and humble, waiting to see if I would speak to her. "Rachel," I said softly, looking at the clear blue sky. She turned around quickly, her eyes wide with hope. "Yes, Dad?" "The birdhouse on the oak tree needs a new coat of paint," I said, a faint smile touching my lips. "Help me mix the yellow paint tomorrow morning." Tears welled up in Rachel's eyes, but she smiled back, nodding her head repeatedly. "I'll be here at 7 o'clock, Dad, I promise." Brandon was sentenced to 6 years in a state correctional facility. I haven't visited him, and I haven't written to him. The boy I raised died the day he boarded that plane to Chicago, leaving only a stranger behind. I'm 70 years old now. My money is back in Box 804, my home is clear, and my mind is as sharp as the day I passed my civil engineering exams. I lost a son I thought I knew, and I lost 30 years of a lie I used to believe. But as I take a sip of cold tea and watch the sun dip below the horizon, I realize I haven't lost my life. I reclaimed it. And for the very first time in 70 years, I am finally living in the light.